It was a chilly evening when David arrived at the edge of the town, where the mansion stood as a shadow against the fading light of the sky. He had heard stories all his life, whispers of its past, and warnings about its present. Locals called it the Vanishing Mansion because, according to legend, it seemed to appear and disappear, depending on who was searching for it. Its gates were rusty, chained loosely, and the paint on the tall pillars had peeled long ago. Despite the decay, there was an aura around it that suggested the house had secrets that refused to die. David, a journalist always looking for stories that defied logic, felt an irresistible pull toward it. He adjusted the strap of his satchel and took a step closer, feeling the gravel crunch beneath his shoes. The wind carried a strange scent, something earthy yet faintly metallic, as if the mansion itself exhaled memories from decades past. He paused, noticing the fog beginning to roll in from the surrounding woods, curling around the trees and creeping toward the mansion's stone steps. Shadows danced across the facade as the last rays of sunlight vanished. David's heart beat faster, not out of fear, but in anticipation. This was what he lived for: the unknown, the unexplainable. The mansion had been abandoned for over 50 years, yet there were records, newspaper clippings, and old journals that hinted at disappearances and strange events tied to it. Tonight, he would see for himself if any of it was true. Pushing the heavy gates aside, which protested with a groan that echoed through the empty lot, David entered the courtyard. It was overgrown, the stone path cracked, weeds pushing through the gaps like tiny sentinels guarding the mansion. The front door stood tall and formidable, its wood scarred by time and the elements. He approached cautiously, running a hand over the door frame, feeling the rough texture of old wood. A sense of history clung to it, as if the house had absorbed every event that had happened within its walls. David reached into his satchel and pulled out a small flashlight. Clicking it on, the beam cut through the darkness, illuminating parts of the massive door and the faint outlines of carvings he hadn't noticed in the dimming daylight. They seemed almost purposeful, symbols etched in hurried strokes, telling a story that had been forgotten long ago. He pushed the door open, and it creaked loudly, announcing his presence. The smell hit him immediately: dust, decay, and something else he couldn't place. It was a mixture of mildew and old paper, as though the house were breathing out its secrets. He stepped inside, the wooden floorboards moaning under his weight. Shadows stretched across the walls, the corners of the rooms swallowed in darkness. David could see remnants of furniture, draped in white sheets like ghosts frozen in time. A grand staircase led to the upper floors, and paintings hung crookedly on the walls, their frames warped and edges torn. The faces in the paintings were stern, yet almost alive, staring down at him as he moved. He began his exploration in the main hall, moving from room to room. Each space held something left behind: old books, broken tea kicks, a music box that still had a faint melody trapped within its mechanism. One room, in particular, drew his attention. It was a study, the walls lined with bookshelves that stretched from floor to ceiling. Dust covered every surface, but the books seemed intact, their spines surprisingly well preserved, despite the year. David pulled one off a shelf, its leather cover cracking softly. As he opened it, inside were handwritten notes, sketches of rooms, and references to events that seemed almost supernatural. The writing spoke of disappearances, of family members vanishing without a trace, and of hidden doors that could only be found by those who truly sought them. He felt a chill as he read, realizing that the mansion was more than just a building. It was a puzzle, a labyrinth designed to protect its secrets. He continued his investigation, carefully examining each doorway and hallway. The mansion seemed alive in some way, responding to his presence. Occasionally, he would catch a flicker of movement in the corner of his eye, but whenever he turned, there was nothing. It was as if the house itself was testing him, gauging his determination. David knew he had to stay focused, to document everything, because these clues could be the key to solving mysteries that had been buried for decades. He found a map pinned to the wall of the study, old and yellowed, depicting the mansion's layout. Several rooms were marked with symbols, some crossed out, others highlighted. One room at the far end of the mansion had a mark that looked like a hidden chamber. His curiosity surged. That would be his next destination. Making his way through narrow hallways, he noticed the air getting colder. Each step echoed eerily, and the fog that had been outside seemed to have followed him in, curling around his ankles. He reached the marked room, and paused. The door was smaller than the others, plain and unassuming, almost as if it wanted to remain unnoticed. David ran his fingers over the knob, feeling the chill of the metal. With a deep breath he opened it, and found a room untouched by time. Inside were more books, journals, and a large chest in the center. The chest was locked, its surface etched with strange symbols, matching those he had seen throughout the house. He ran his hand over the lock, feeling the intricate designs carved into the metal. They were deliberate, precise, as though meant to deter casual intruders, but not someone truly seeking the truth. David retrieved a small notebook from his satchel, and began documenting everything: the symbols, the layout of the room, the arrangement of objects. As he wrote, he felt a subtle vibration beneath his feet, like the house was breathing. The walls seemed to hum with energy, faint whispers curling at the edges of his hearing. He paused, listening, but the sound was indistinct, a mixture of wind and memory. Setting the notebook aside, he tried the chest again. This time, he examined the carvings more closely, and noticed a pattern. Pressing certain symbols in sequence, he felt a click. The lock opened with a soft pop, revealing contents that took his breath away. Inside were letters, documents, and old photographs showing people who had lived in the mansion decades ago. Some of the faces were familiar from newspaper clippings he had seen. Others were unknown. There was an aura of mystery surrounding each item, as if they were pieces of a puzzle waiting to be assembled. Hours passed as he sifted through the chest, noting the connections between names, events, and the symbols he had discovered. It became apparent that the mansion had a history of people vanishing, leaving only traces behind. The journals hinted at a secret society within the family, a group that believed in protecting a hidden legacy. David's pulse quickened. He was uncovering not just a haunted house, but a story of intrigue, power, and secrecy that had been carefully concealed for generations. Every artifact he examined seemed to whisper fragments of a tale he was only beginning to understand. As the night deepened, the mansion seemed to grow darker, the shadows more pronounced. David could hear the wind howling through broken windows, carrying with it the voices of the past. He felt no fear, only an insatiable curiosity. The mansion had chosen him, in a way, to be its chronicler, to bring its hidden story to light. He decided to explore the upper floors, following the staircase that groaned under each step. Each landing revealed more rooms filled with remnants of lives once lived, clocks frozen in time, portraits with eyes that seemed to follow him, and bookshelves filled with secrets waiting to be read. The sense of history was overwhelming, yet comforting, as if the mansion acknowledged his presence and welcomed him into its fold. Reaching the top floor, David found a narrow corridor, leading to what the map had marked as the hidden chamber. The door was almost invisible, blending into the wall, its outline detectable only by the faint seam in the plaster. He pressed the sequence of symbols he had learned from the chest, and the door clicked open. Inside was a room unlike any he had seen before. The walls were lined with shelves, and the floor covered with scattered documents and artifacts. At the center was a pedestal with a single book resting upon it. The cover was worn, the pages yellowed, but it radiated an air of importance. David approached it cautiously, realizing that this might be the key to understanding the mansion's entire history. He opened the book, and the words within seemed to come alive, revealing stories of the family, the disappearances, and the secret rituals that had kept the mansion shrouded in mystery. Every page deepened the intrigue, and David knew that he had only scratched the surface of a story that would consume his every waking thought. The night stretched on, and the mansion whispered its secrets. David documented everything, knowing that this was not just a story. It was an uncovering of history, a journey into the unknown. The mansion had revealed its first layer, and he understood that his adventure was only beginning. Each artifact, each symbol, each page of the journals, was a thread in a tapestry of mystery that had been hidden for decades. As the first light of dawn crept through the broken windows, David sat in the hidden chamber, exhausted but exhilarated. He had entered the mansion seeking answers, and had found a labyrinth of secrets that promised to unravel the past. The Vanishing Mansion was no longer just a legend. It was a story, waiting to be told, and he was determined to be its chronicler. Piece by piece, clue by clue, the sun had barely risen, casting pale light through the broken windows, yet the mansion seemed untouched by morning. Dust motes floated in the air like tiny specters, and the silence was profound, as if the house itself was holding its breath. David remained in the hidden chamber, the ancient book open on his lap, absorbing every word. Each passage revealed more about the family who had lived here, their obsessions, their disappearances, and the strange rituals meant to protect their secrets. He felt both exhilarated and unnerved. It was one thing to read about history in a library. It was another to touch it, to stand in the very place where it had unfolded. He carefully noted the symbols and diagrams, sketching them in his notebook. One particular illustration caught his attention, a layout of the mansion with hidden passageways and rooms that were not marked on any modern floor plan. The diagrams suggested a network of secret corridors, some accessible through sliding panels or false walls. The family had built this labyrinth for reasons that were still unclear, though David suspected it had something to do with protecting certain items of immense importance. The thought that the mansion itself had been constructed to conceal secrets fascinated him. It was like walking through history, while uncovering a puzzle, left for someone determined enough to solve it. Feeling a mixture of anticipation and caution, David decided to explore the rest of the mansion. Following the clues he had found in the hidden chamber, he descended the narrow staircase leading back to the main floors, moving silently over the creaking wooden boards. The mansion was eerily still, but he sensed movement, subtle shifts in the shadows, as if the house were aware of his presence. He shook off the feeling, attributing it to imagination, and focused on the symbols he had memorized. The first passage led him to the east wing, where the rooms were larger, and once likely served as living quarters. The air here was colder, heavier, carrying a faint scent of aged wood and parchment. He opened a door to find a bedroom frozen in time, a four-poster bed draped in a dust-covered canopy, a dresser with cracked mirrors reflecting the dim light, and an old wardrobe that seemed to hum faintly, as if resonating with the mansion's energy. The wood was solid, and the hinges groaned as he gently opened it. Inside were more papers, a few personal belongings, and a small box with a delicate lock. He picked up the box and noticed symbols similar to those in the hidden chamber. With a careful combination of touches, he unlocked it to reveal letters and a diary. The diary belonged to a woman who had lived in the mansion long ago, detailing strange occurrences, footsteps in empty corridors, doors opening on their own, and fleeting shadows. She wrote about a sense that the house itself was alive, observing and interacting with its inhabitants. The diary ended abruptly. The last entry dated decades ago, leaving an unsettling sense of incompleteness. David could feel the tension in her words, the fear and fascination intermingled, and he understood that he was beginning to share her experience. Continuing his exploration, he moved down a narrow corridor that led to what appeared to be a library, smaller than the study but filled with hundreds of volumes. The shelves were tall and packed tightly, the books ranging from mundane tomes to leather-bound manuscripts that radiated age and mystery. David ran his fingers along the spines, feeling the rough texture, absorbing the presence of knowledge frozen in time. He pulled out a particularly thick volume, its cover cracked, and leafed through it carefully. The pages contained detailed accounts of the mansion's history, notes about family members, and cryptic entries describing hidden rooms and artifacts. One note mentioned a gallery of memories, a term that David did not yet understand,
but it hinted at a place where the mansion's most significant secrets were preserved. David took careful notes, realizing that every clue was connected. The mansion was more than a collection of rooms and corridors. It was a repository of events, objects, and lives intertwined. He noticed a faint draft coming from the corner of the room, following the air current. He pressed his hand against the wall, and found it cold to the touch. Moving along, he discovered a seam in the paneling, subtle and almost invisible. Pushing gently, a portion of the wall slid open, revealing a narrow passageway that led downward into darkness. The air was damp, earthy, and smelled faintly of old stone. He took out his flashlight, illuminating the path ahead. The walls were lined with rough-hewn bricks, and the floor was uneven, but the passage seemed intentionally constructed, not a natural decay of the mansion. Each sound of his footsteps echoed back, amplified in the narrow space. The passage twisted and turned, sometimes widening slightly into alcoves, containing artifacts and journals left behind by the mansion's inhabitants. He noticed one alcove, with a set of drawings, depicting the mansion from different angles, highlighting hidden doors and rooms. One drawing, more detailed than the others, depicted a central chamber with an unusual mechanism, possibly the heart of the mansion's secret. David's pulse quickened. This could be the key he had been searching for. He carefully documented the sketches, noting the intricate details, and pressed onward. The passage eventually led him to a staircase descending further into darkness. David hesitated briefly, feeling the weight of the unknown pressing upon him. He reminded himself why he was here: the pursuit of truth, the unraveling of a long-concealed mystery. He descended carefully, the steps uneven and crumbling in places. At the bottom, he found a small stone chamber, circular and low-ceilinged. The walls were covered in symbols matching those he had encountered earlier, and the center held a pedestal similar to the one in the hidden chamber upstairs. On it rested an ancient leather-bound book, much older than the others he had seen. The cover was etched with intricate designs that seemed almost alive, shifting in the flickering light of his flashlight. He opened the book, revealing pages filled with handwriting in a style that was both elegant and alien, detailing rituals, family history, and cryptic instructions for preserving secrets. David carefully documented everything, knowing that the contents could reveal the mansion's ultimate mystery. The text spoke of an artifact hidden within the mansion, an object of immense significance, protected through generations. It mentioned a guardian, not a person, but a mechanism built into the mansion itself, capable of concealing and revealing the artifact only to the worthy. David's excitement surged. He realized that the mansion was not just a passive structure. It had been designed to interact with those who entered, testing their intentions and perseverance. Every room, every hidden passage, every symbol was part of this elaborate puzzle. He felt a deep respect for the architects of the mansion, who had combined art, architecture, and secrecy into a living, breathing entity. Hours passed as David explored the lower chambers, uncovering more journals, diagrams, and sketches. He found references to family members who had vanished without a trace, some of whom had discovered parts of the mansion's secret, and others who had not. The pattern was clear. Those who understood the mansion's intricacies could unlock its mysteries, while those who did not remained lost, their fates unknown. David felt a mix of thrill and unease. The mansion was revealing itself to him slowly, testing his resolve. He knew that patience and careful observation were key. One hasty mistake could result in missed clues, or worse, getting lost within the maze of hidden corridors. As the afternoon light faded, David returned to the hidden chamber upstairs, carrying the most significant findings with him. He spread the documents across the dusty floor, piecing together the narrative. The mansion's past was complex, filled with ambition, secrecy, and a touch of obsession. The family had sought to protect something beyond material wealth, something of profound importance, using architecture itself as a safeguard. David realized that he was not just uncovering a story for his readers. He was witnessing a legacy meticulously preserved for decades, a challenge left to anyone determined enough to solve. He felt a profound connection to the mansion, as if it recognized his dedication and allowed him access to deeper truths. Night fell again, the mansion's shadows deepening, and the air growing colder. David lit a small lantern, casting a warm glow across the chamber. The walls, lined with symbols, seemed to shimmer in the flickering light. He reflected on the journey so far, the hidden passages, the secret chambers, the journals, and the artifacts. Every discovery had drawn him further into the mansion's web, each clue a thread connecting past and present. He understood that this was only the beginning. The mansion had more layers, more secrets yet to reveal, and he was determined to uncover them all. The thrill of the unknown, the puzzle of the mansion, and the challenge of understanding its guardianship consumed his thought. He knew he would not leave until he had pieced together the story in its entirety, no matter how long it took or how deep into the mansion he had to go.
David spent the night in the hidden chamber, poring over the notes and journals he had collected. The lantern flickered against the walls, casting long, shifting shadows that made the mansion feel alive, like it was observing him. Every page of the journal seemed to whisper secrets of the past, and he could almost hear the echoes of the lives that had passed through these rooms. The deeper he delved, the more he realized that the mansion was not just a building, but a living puzzle, designed to challenge anyone who sought its truths. The family that had built it had been meticulous, clever, and cautious, hiding clues in plain sight, while ensuring that only the most persistent and careful would uncover them. By dawn, he had created a rough map of the mansion's known hidden passages, symbols, and the rooms he had explored. He noticed patterns emerging from the sketches and writings. Certain symbols appeared repeatedly near rooms with secrets, while others marked corridors that led nowhere. It became clear that the mansion had been built with layers, each deeper than the last, and only by understanding the patterns could one progress further. David felt a mixture of awe and apprehension. The mansion demanded intelligence, patience, and careful observation, and he was beginning to understand its lessons. He decided to investigate a corridor he had seen the previous day, but had not yet explored fully. It was on the west wing of the mansion, a series of narrow, twisting hallways that seemed to lead nowhere. The floorboards creaked under his weight, and the air was thick with the scent of mold and old wood. Shadows stretched unnaturally along the walls, and he often caught glimpses of shapes at the edge of his vision. Though whenever he turned, there was nothing. The mansion seemed to test him, probing his resolve and attentiveness. David reminded himself to stay focused, to observe everything, no matter how minor it seemed, for any detail could hold significance in this intricate maze. As he advanced, he discovered a small room tucked behind a false wall. The door was unremarkable, blending seamlessly into the surrounding paneling. Pressing the sequence of symbols he had learned, it opened with a soft click. Inside was a chamber filled with artifacts, ornate boxes, old letters, and peculiar instruments of unknown purpose. Among these objects was a collection of photographs, black and white images showing the mansion in its earlier days. The faces of the family members were stern, their expressions formal, yet there was something enigmatic about their gaze. One photograph depicted a grand ball, the room bustling with people, yet in the corner of the image a figure seemed partially obscured, almost as if intentionally hidden from view. David studied it carefully, noting every detail. The figure appeared in several other photographs, always in the background, always partially concealed. This was a clue, though its meaning eluded him. He carefully documented the photographs and letters, noting recurring themes and reference. The artifacts suggested that the family had been deeply invested in maintaining the mansion's secrets, and that these secrets were more than just personal or trivial. They were strategic, calculated, and intentionally concealed. David realized that his task was not only to uncover the history of the mansion, but also to piece together the underlying purpose that had motivated its builders. Every artifact, every symbol, every hidden passage was part of a deliberate design, a challenge that had been left for someone perceptive enough to discover. After hours of examining the artifacts, he continued through the west wing, following the faint outlines of another hidden doorway suggested by the journals. The corridor grew narrower, and the ceiling lower, forcing him to stoop slightly as he moved. The walls were lined with bricks, rough and cold, and the air grew damper, carrying a faint earthy smell. The floor was uneven, requiring careful navigation to avoid tripping. At one point he found a small alcove with remnants of old furniture, a chair, a table, and a chest. The chest, though locked and simple in design, contained more letters and documents that elaborated on the mansion's hidden chambers and the family's meticulous record-keeping. The precision of their documentation was impressive, revealing a mind focused on legacy and secrecy. David felt a growing respect for the people who had built this labyrinth, realizing that every detail of the mansion had been carefully considered, from the layout to the placement of symbols and hidden rooms. He discovered a stairwell descending further, beyond any of the previously mapped areas. The steps were uneven and worn, as though they had seen decades of use, yet had been largely forgotten over time. The stairwell opened into a larger chamber, dimly lit by shafts of light filtering through cracks in the walls. The air was cooler here, the silence profound. In the center of the chamber was a pedestal, this one larger and more ornate than any he had seen before. On it rested a book, bound in dark leather with metal clasps. The cover was etched with elaborate symbols, more complex than those found in the other volume. David approached carefully, feeling the weight of history in the air. Opening the book, he found intricate diagrams, notes and entries detailing the mansion's construction, the family's intentions, and the protective measures embedded throughout the building. It was a blueprint of both architecture and legacy, a guide to understanding the mansion's deepest secrets. He spent hours in the chamber, documenting everything meticulously. The diagrams revealed mechanisms hidden within walls and floors, secret compartments, and corridors that shifted the mansion's layout, depending on how one navigated it. It was a design both clever and disorienting, ensuring that only someone patient and intelligent enough could follow the intended path. The family's obsession with secrecy became increasingly evident, and David understood that their purpose had been to preserve something of immense importance. The journals hinted at a final chamber, a place where the mansion's most valuable secrets were safeguarded, and it seemed he was gradually approaching it. As he explored, David noticed subtle changes in the man's shadows seemed to lengthen unnaturally, and faint noises, soft footsteps, whispers, echoed through the corridors. He reminded himself to stay calm and focused. The mansion's atmosphere was intense, designed to challenge the mind and sense. Each creaking floorboard, each draft of cold air, each flicker of shadow served as both warning and guide. He carefully followed the symbols etched into walls and floors, recognizing patterns that guided him toward deeper layers of the build. Every turn of the corridor, every hidden doorway, brought him closer to understanding the mansion's ultimate secret. By evening, he had reached a corridor lined with doors, each marked with subtle symbols. Consulting his notes, he identified one door that matched a recurring pattern he had observed. Pressing the sequence of symbols, the door opened, revealing a spiral staircase descending into darkness. David took a deep breath and began his descent, the air growing colder and damper with each step. The staircase seemed endless, curling downward as if leading to the very heart of the mansion. At the bottom, he found a small circular chamber, the walls lined with bricks and symbols, and a low ceiling that forced him to bend slightly. In the center was a stone pedestal, and upon it rested an object wrapped in cloth. David approached cautiously, heart racing with anticipation. He carefully unwrapped the cloth, to reveal a small, intricately designed artifact. Its purpose was unclear,
but the craftsmanship suggested immense value and significance. The journals had hinted at such an object, protected through generations, and here it was, finally revealed. David examined it closely, noting the symbols and design, realizing that it was a key to the mansion's secrets. Both literal and symbolic, it was not just a physical object, but a representation of the family's dedication to preserving their legacy and the mansion's mysteries. As he studied the artifact, he became aware of a subtle vibration in the floor, a gentle hum that seemed to resonate with the symbols etched throughout the chamber. It was as if the mansion itself acknowledged the discovery, reacting to the unveiling of its treasure. David felt a mix of awe and humility, understanding that he had not merely uncovered an object, but had participated in a centuries-old puzzle, carefully constructed to protect and challenge. He carefully documented the artifact and its surroundings, knowing that this would be one of the most significant discoveries of his career. Hours passed as he explored the chamber, taking detailed notes and sketches. He realized that the artifact was connected to other hidden rooms, passages and symbols throughout the mansion. Each discovery seemed to unlock another layer, revealing a network of secrets interwoven through architecture, documentation and objects. The mansion was a living testament to the family's ingenuity, their obsession with secrecy, and their desire to preserve a story that would endure beyond their lifetimes. David felt a profound connection to the place, understanding that his journey was far from over. There were more layers to uncover, more secrets to piece together, and the mansion's challenges continued to test his patience, perception and resolve. As night fell once more, David sat in the circular chamber, artifact in hand, reflecting on the discoveries of the day. He realized that the mansion was more than a location. It was a narrative, a complex story preserved in brick, wood, symbols and objects. Each room, corridor and artifact contributed to a greater whole, revealing the intentions and ingenuity of those who had come before. The mansion had offered its first true revelation, and David understood that the path forward would require persistence, intelligence, and careful attention to every detail. He felt a surge of determination, knowing that he was part of an ongoing story, one that spanned decades and perhaps centuries, waiting for someone perceptive enough to understand it fully. The artifact in David's hands felt heavier than its size suggested, as if it carried the weight of the mansion's centuries-old secrets. He examined it under the dim glow of his lantern, tracing the intricate carvings with careful fingers. Every symbol seemed deliberate, every curve precise, like a language meant only for those willing to decode it. As he studied, he noticed a faint outline on the pedestal beneath it, a depression shaped exactly like the artifact itself. His pulse quickened. The mansion had designed this, an interactive puzzle, a mechanism that responded to the presence of certain objects. Slowly, he placed the artifact into the indentation. A soft click echoed through the chamber, and the pedestal vibrated slightly. The walls seemed to hum, faintly, a subtle acknowledgement of the correct placement. David stepped back, marveling at the mansion's engineering and foresight. The floor beneath him shifted slightly, revealing a narrow stairwell descending even deeper into the mansion. The hum from the walls grew stronger, resonating through his chest. David felt a mix of awe and apprehension, realizing he was about to enter the mansion's heart. Gathering his courage, he descended the stairs carefully. The walls were lined with aged bricks, the air damp and cool, carrying a faint scent of earth and time. Shadows played along the edges, creating shapes that seemed to shift with every step. The mansion felt alive in a way he had not yet experienced, watching, testing, acknowledging his presence. Each step brought him closer to something monumental, something the family had safeguarded for generations. The walls were engraved with countless symbols, some matching those he had encountered before, others entirely new. The center of the chamber held a stone altar, and surrounding it were objects arranged meticulously, as if waiting for a precise sequence of action. David's lantern illuminated the chamber, casting a soft glow over the intricate patterns on the floor, which appeared to be a map of the mansion's hidden layers. The room exuded an aura of significance, of importance, as though the family had designed it as the mansion's core, the place where everything converged. He stepped closer to the altar, studying the arrangement of objects. There were several boxes, each marked with symbols, and small scrolls tied with ribbons of faded color. David realized these were keys to understanding the mansion's deeper mysteries, artifacts meant to guide the persistent seeker. The journals he had read mentioned such a chamber, but had not detailed its appearance. This was the heart of the mansion, the culmination of decades of careful planning and protection. His excitement surged. He had uncovered not only the secrets of the past, but also a blueprint for how the mansion itself functioned as a living puzzle. Carefully, he examined the symbols etched into the floor. They formed a pattern, connecting the altar to each corner of the chamber. David traced the lines with his fingers, noting intersections and clusters. The artifact he had placed earlier seemed to be part of this design, activating a mechanism hidden beneath the stone. As he moved along the pattern, the floor vibrated faintly under his touch, responding to his exploration. He realized that the mansion was interactive in ways he had not yet fully understood. Each discovery unlocked another, requiring patience, observation, and careful thought. Hours passed. As David catalogued each item and symbol, he began opening the boxes one by one, discovering more artifacts, letters, and journals. Each item revealed fragments of the family's story, their ambitions, fears, and the meticulous care they had taken to preserve their legacy. One journal, in particular, stood out. It detailed the family's belief in a protective system built into the mansion itself, a network of corridors, chambers, and symbols designed to conceal and reveal secrets selectively. The journal mentioned the Gallery of Memories, a place where the mansion's most important stories and events were preserved. David realized that this chamber was the gateway to that gallery, and the artifact he had found was the key. With careful attention, he followed the instructions in the journal, placing objects on the altar in a specific sequence, aligning symbols with those on the floor. As he completed the arrangement, the hum from the walls intensified, vibrating through his body. A portion of the floor shifted, revealing a hidden staircase leading further down, deeper than any passage he had previously explored. David hesitated, feeling the weight of what lay ahead. The mansion had guided him here, but the final layer of its secret remained unknown. Gathering his courage, he descended the new staircase, the air growing colder and denser with every step. At the bottom, he found a long, narrow corridor lined with more symbols, the walls etched with images depicting events from decades past. Each engraving told a story: a family member disappearing, a hidden room being discovered, a secret ceremony being conducted. The corridor seemed to pulse with energy, the mansion itself resonating with its history. David walked slowly, absorbing each detail, sketching and taking notes. He realized that the mansion's designers had encoded not only the physical layout, but also the chronology of events, ensuring that the legacy could be understood only by someone patient and attentive. It was expansive, with a high domed ceiling covered in intricate murals depicting the family's history and the mansion's construction. The floor was patterned with symbols forming concentric circles, radiating from a central pedestal. On the pedestal rested an object, wrapped in cloth, far more elaborate than the artifact he had found earlier. Its design suggested immense importance, and David approached with reverence. Carefully, he unwrapped it to reveal a beautifully crafted box, its surface covered in carvings and inlaid with metal accents. The journals hinted at this object, describing it as the ultimate key to understanding the mansion's mystery. David studied the box closely, noting the delicate carvings and symbols. It was clear that it was meant to be opened in a specific way, following a sequence that combined observation, logic, and knowledge of the mansion's design. He examined the floor symbols, comparing them to the carvings on the box, and began to understand the sequence required. As he carefully followed the steps, the room responded subtly. The hum intensified, shadows shifted, and faint light illuminated the murals above. The mansion was alive, acknowledging his progress, guiding him toward the revelation it had safeguarded for decades. With meticulous attention, David completed the sequence, and the box opened with a soft click. Inside were letters, journals, and documents chronicling the family's secrets, their discoveries, and the purpose of the mansion itself. The writings revealed that the mansion had been designed as a repository of knowledge and memory, a place where events, discoveries, and legacies were preserved through architecture, symbolism, and artifact. The family had anticipated the passage of time, ensuring that only those who were perceptive, patient, and dedicated could access the full story. David felt a profound sense of accomplishment, realizing that he had become part of this legacy, a chronicler of truths long hidden. As he read through the documents, he discovered references to other hidden chambers, objects, and mechanisms yet to be explored. The mansion's design was more intricate than he had imagined, a multi-layered puzzle that extended beyond the physical, incorporating chronology, symbolism, and interaction with its occupant. David understood that his journey was far from over. The mansion still had secrets waiting to be uncovered, challenges designed to test his resolve and perception. He felt exhilarated, knowing that the story he was unraveling was not merely historical but dynamic, interactive, and alive. The night deepened, and the mansion's shadows grew longer. David lit his lantern, illuminating the murals, symbols, and objects around him. Every detail mattered. Every observation was a clue leading to further understanding. The mansion was patient, deliberate, and precise, rewarding those who approached it with respect and careful attention. David reflected on his discoveries, the hidden passages, artifacts, journals, and symbols, realizing that he had only just begun to understand the mansion's full complexity. Each layer revealed deeper truths, intertwining architecture, history, and legacy into a coherent if enigmatic whole. He carefully documented the final chamber, sketching diagrams, taking notes, and photographing detail. The artifact and the documents provided insights into the mansion's purpose, the family's intentions, and the methods used to protect their legacy. David felt a deep connection to the mansion, understanding that it had chosen him as a seeker, a chronicler capable of deciphering its mystery. He realized that his role was not merely to uncover history, but to participate in an ongoing narrative, one that spanned generations and would continue to unfold as long as there were those willing to engage with the mansion's secret. By the early hours of the morning, David emerged from the chamber, exhausted but exhilarated. He had uncovered significant layers of the mansion's hidden design, discovered artifacts, journals, and documents, and understood the mansion's interactive nature. The experience had tested his intellect, patience, and perception, rewarding him with insights into a family's carefully preserved legacy. The mansion, alive with history and mystery, had revealed its first major secret, and David knew that many more awaited discovery. He felt a sense of purpose, determination, and anticipation, ready to continue his exploration, aware that the mansion still held countless puzzles, chambers, and stories waiting to be unveiled.
David awoke in the hidden chamber, the early morning light filtering faintly through the cracked windows. The mansion was silent, yet it hummed with an energy he had come to recognize, a subtle vibration through the floors and walls, as if the building itself was alive and aware of his presence. The discoveries of the previous night weighed on him, filling his mind with questions, possibilities, and the tantalizing promise of deeper secrets. He gathered his notes, the journals, and the artifacts he had uncovered so far, preparing for another day of exploration. The mansion was vast, and he knew that each layer he revealed would only lead to more mysteries, more puzzles that required his careful observation and deduction. He started by revisiting the spiral staircase that had led him to the final chamber the night before. Though he had explored the lower levels extensively, there were corridors he had yet to follow, hidden doors that the journals hinted at, but did not describe fully. David traced the walls slowly, noting every symbol, every imperfection, and every subtle shift in the floorboards that might indicate a concealed passage. The mansion seemed to react to his movements. The faint hum intensified as he approached certain areas. Shadows shifted in ways that suggested guidance, not menace. He had learned to trust these signs, understanding that the mansion rewarded patience, attention, and respect for its intricate design. Moving down the western corridor, he noticed a small, unassuming door tucked behind a panel that had previously gone unnoticed. The markings on the door matched a recurring motif he had seen in several of the journals, a symbol resembling intertwined circles, often associated with concealed rooms. He pressed the sequence of symbols he had memorized, and the door opened with a quiet click. Inside was a chamber filled with shelves and cabinets, each containing objects that hinted at the mansion's layered history. There were letters, old maps, boxes containing intricate mechanical devices, and delicate manuscripts. David carefully documented each item, realizing that this room was a repository, a secondary archive designed to preserve knowledge and artifacts that were less critical than those in the main chamber, but still essential to understanding the mansion's secrets. As he examined the items, he discovered a set of manuscripts detailing the mansion's construction. The texts described the architect's intentions, the family's plans for security and concealment, and the interactive mechanisms built into the structure. These mechanisms were not merely physical, they were symbolic, designed to guide, mislead, and test anyone who sought to uncover the mansion's ultimate secrets. David marveled at the foresight and ingenuity of the builders, recognizing the mansion as a living entity, a fusion of architecture, strategy, and narrative. Every corridor, room, and symbol was a deliberate component of a complex system meant to challenge, educate, and preserve. Continuing his exploration, David followed a faint draft, leading to another hidden passage. The air grew cooler, damp, and faintly metallic, a scent he had come to associate with the mansion's deeper level. The walls of the passage were rough, lined with bricks and sporadic symbols, guiding him toward an area not marked on any of the maps he had found. The corridor twisted and turned, forcing him to pause frequently to note patterns, intersections, and marking. Occasionally he caught glimpses of shadows moving at the edge of his vision, shapes that seemed to retreat whenever he looked directly. It was disorienting but exhilarating. The mansion was alive, interacting with him, testing his focus and resolve. The corridor led to a small antechamber, its walls lined with alcoves containing artifacts covered in dust and cobwebs. Each alcove held a story, fragments of the family's life and legacy preserved meticulously. One alcove contained letters detailing events from decades past, describing gatherings, discoveries, and the gradual expansion of the mansion's hidden chambers. Another contained maps and diagrams, illustrating passageways, hidden rooms, and secret staircases. David realized that this antechamber functioned as a preparatory space, offering clues to the deeper mysteries that awaited in the mansion's core. Among the artifacts, he discovered a small, intricately carved box, sealed with a combination of symbols he had seen throughout the mansion. Opening it carefully, he found additional journals and notes describing interactions with the mansion's mechanisms, including guidance for navigating the most complex and concealed areas. These writings hinted at a central repository, a place where the mansion's most valuable secrets were kept, protected by layers of puzzles and interactive devices. David studied the notes closely, recognizing the patterns and understanding that the mansion was gradually revealing itself to him, step by step. As he moved deeper into the hidden passages, the corridor opened into a chamber with a vaulted ceiling, walls adorned with faded murals depicting events from the family's history. The images illustrated key moments, construction of secret rooms, discovery of artifacts, and instances where individuals had interacted with the mansion's mechanisms. Some murals depicted shadowed figures, navigating corridors and chambers,
symbolizing the persistent seekers who had come before. David realized that these images served both as documentation and as subtle guidance, encoding lessons and warnings for those determined enough to continue. He examined the murals carefully, noting connections between symbols on the walls and objects he had discovered. The patterns suggested a sequence, a map leading to areas not yet explored. Using the journals and his notes, David began to decipher the connections, understanding that the mansion's design was more intricate than he had initially imagined. Every detail mattered: the alignment of symbols, the placement of objects, and even the play of shadows across the murals. The mansion was an elaborate puzzle, one that required not only observation but intuition and perseverance. Following the guidance of the murals and journals, he discovered a small door partially concealed by a wall panel. Pressing the sequence of symbols, it opened to reveal a spiral staircase descending further into the mansion's depth. The air was cooler and damper, carrying the earthy scent he had grown accustomed to in the lower levels. The stairs were narrow, winding, and uneven, requiring careful navigation. David descended cautiously, aware that any misstep could result in injury or cause him to miss crucial clues embedded in the walls and floor. At the bottom of the staircase, he entered a long corridor lined with shelves and alcoves. The air vibrated faintly, the hum he had come to associate with the mansion's responsive nature growing more pronounced. Each alcove contained artifacts, documents, and objects connected to the family's legacy, offering insights into their priorities, fears, and methods of safeguarding secrets. David examined each item meticulously, noting patterns, cross-referencing with his previous findings, and documenting every detail. The mansion's interactive design became increasingly evident: the placement of objects, the arrangement of corridors, and the alignment of symbols all contributed to a system that guided, tested, and rewarded persistence. At the end of the corridor, he found a chamber with a stone pedestal in the center, covered with intricate carvings, and surrounded by concentric patterns etched into the floor. On the pedestal rested a wrapped object, far more elaborate than any he had encountered. Carefully, he unwrapped it, revealing a delicate device resembling a mechanical key, its surface adorned with symbols and inlays matching those throughout the mansion. The journals hinted at such a device, describing it as essential for accessing the mansion's ultimate secret. David examined the device, noting its precision, craftsmanship, and the subtle instructions encoded in its design. It was clear that this was a key to navigating the mansion's most concealed area. Following the sequence described in the journals, David activated the device, aligning it with the symbols on the floor. The hum from the walls intensified, resonating through his chest as the floor shifted subtly to reveal a hidden passage leading further into the mansion. The shadows danced more vividly, flickering along the walls as if acknowledging his progress. David felt a mixture of exhilaration and reverence. He was entering a space the mansion had safeguarded for generations, designed to reveal its deepest secrets only to those capable of understanding its intricate design. The passage led to a large chamber, its vaulted ceiling decorated with faded murals and symbols connecting to the artifacts and documents he had discovered. The room radiated significance, a culmination of the mansion's layered secret. In the center was a raised platform, upon which rested a chest, adorned with symbols matching the device he had just activated. Carefully, he opened the chest, discovering additional journals, letters, and objects detailing the mansion's construction, the family's intentions, and the mechanisms designed to preserve their legacy. David understood that he was witnessing the mansion's core narrative, a complex tapestry of architecture, artifacts, and interactive design, meticulously crafted to challenge and enlighten the persistent seeker. Hours passed as David documented the chamber, analyzing patterns, cross-referencing symbols, and sketching diagrams. The mansion's secrets were vast, layered, and interconnected, revealing not only the family's history, but also a sophisticated understanding of human perception, cognition, and interaction. Each discovery reinforced the mansion's complexity, illustrating a deliberate and meticulous approach to preservation and concealment. David realized that the mansion was not simply a historical structure, but a living puzzle, a testament to the ingenuity and foresight of its creator. As night fell, David lit a lantern, illuminating the chamber's murals, artifacts, and symbols. He reflected on his journey so far, recognizing that each step, each discovery, and each observation had brought him closer to understanding the mansion's ultimate purpose. The interactive mechanisms, hidden passages, and carefully preserved documents demonstrated a level of planning and intelligence that was both awe-inspiring and humbling. David knew that his exploration was far from complete. The mansion held more layers, more secrets, and more challenges, awaiting those willing to persevere and decode its intricate design. David had spent countless hours navigating the mansion's hidden passages, decoding its symbols, and documenting its artifacts, yet he knew that the deepest mysteries still lay ahead. The hum that had guided him for days was stronger than ever, resonating through the stone walls, the floor, and even the ceiling, as if the mansion itself were preparing him for the ultimate revelation. He felt a mixture of anticipation and unease, knowing that the layers he was about to uncover would demand both intellect and courage. The mansion had become a living entity in his mind, a complex organism of stone, wood, and symbols, interacting with him in subtle but undeniable ways. Every step he took, every corridor he navigated, seemed to be a test of perception, intuition, and patience. The device had activated the hidden passage, and David knew that he was now on the threshold of the mansion's most guarded secrets. The platform, with the chest and the surrounding murals, seemed to pulse with energy, the symbols aligning in a way that suggested a sequence yet to be complete. Carefully, he studied the carvings on the chest and compared them with the floor patterns. The alignment was precise, almost ritualistic, as though the mansion demanded that the seeker perform a series of exact actions to unlock the next layer. David took a deep breath, understanding that any misstep could render the chamber inaccessible or conceal the secrets. Once again, the hum intensified, vibrating through the chamber and resonating within him. As he adjusted the device, he noticed faint movements in the shadows at the edge of his vision. They were subtle, almost imperceptible, yet unmistakably deliberate. David reminded himself to stay focused, recognizing that the mansion often used illusions, shifting shadows, and subtle cues to test both attention and determination. The device clicked into place, and a hidden door in the far wall slowly slid open, revealing a staircase descending into absolute darkness. The air grew colder, the scent of damp earth stronger, and the vibration of the walls more pronounced. He stepped cautiously into the staircase, the weight of anticipation pressing on his chest. The stairs twisted downward, narrow and uneven, forcing David to focus on each step. The hum seemed to guide him, growing louder as he descended, the walls resonating with energy that felt both familiar and alien. The deeper he went, the more the mansion seemed alive, reacting to his presence. Shadows shifted across the stone walls, shapes forming and dissolving as though in an acknowledgement of his progress. He realized that he was nearing a core section of the mansion, a place the family had designed to preserve the most vital secrets. The anticipation was almost unbearable, yet he moved steadily, careful not to rush, knowing that precision and patience were key. At the bottom of the staircase, he entered a chamber larger than any he had yet encountered. The ceiling arched high above, covered in faded murals, depicting the mansion's history and the family's legacy. Symbols covered the walls, floor and ceiling, forming complex interlocking patterns. In the center of the room was a massive pedestal, surrounded by concentric rings etched into the floor. The hum reached a crescendo, vibrating through the air and his very bones. On the pedestal rested an object wrapped in a cloth, its size and shape suggesting immense significance. David approached slowly, every step measured, aware that this was the culmination of his journey, the point where the mansion's ultimate secret would reveal itself. Unwrapping the cloth, he found a large, elaborately crafted box, its surface covered in carvings, metal inlays, and intricate symbols. The journals he had studied hinted at this object, describing it as the repository of the mansion's most critical secrets, the key to understanding both the family's legacy and the mansion's design. David studied the carvings carefully, recognizing connections to symbols he had encountered in previous chambers. He understood that opening the box required precise alignment with the floor patterns, the murals, and the mechanical device he had activated earlier. The mansion demanded a combination of intellect, observation, and intuition. He began positioning the box according to the intricate patterns, following the sequences he had deciphered from the journals and previous discovery. As he completed the sequence, the floor trembled slightly, and the pedestal emitted a low, resonant tone. Shadows flickered across the chamber, and faint light illuminated previously hidden carvings on the wall. The mansion seemed to respond, acknowledging his progress and revealing the next layer of its secrets. Carefully, he opened the box, revealing a collection of documents, journals, and artifacts, more extensive than anything he had encountered before. The writings detailed the family's most closely guarded secrets, their achievements, and the mechanisms by which they had preserved their legacy across generations. David realized that he was witnessing the culmination of centuries of meticulous planning, dedication, and ingenuity. Hours passed as he studied the contents of the box. Each document and artifact revealed layers of the mansion's design, the family's intentions, and the methods used to encode and protect knowledge. There were diagrams of hidden chambers, descriptions of secret mechanisms, and accounts of events long past. The mansion's creators had anticipated seekers like David, designing a system that required careful observation, logical deduction, and perseverance. He felt a profound respect for their foresight, realizing that the mansion itself was a narrative, a story preserved in stone, wood, and symbols, meant to educate and challenge those willing to engage with it fully. As he continued exploring the chamber, he noticed a subtle indentation in the wall, barely visible under the faint light. Pressing it, a section of the wall slid open, revealing another passage. The hum intensified, the air growing colder, and the shadows danced more vividly along the corridor. David understood that the mansion was guiding him further, revealing layers previously concealed. He proceeded cautiously, the passage twisting and narrowing, eventually opening into a smaller chamber, filled with additional artifacts, letters, and journals. The objects were arranged with meticulous care, each one connected to the family's legacy and the mansion's interactive design. They were designed to interact with the mansion, unlocking hidden compartments, revealing passageways, and providing access to areas of the building that had remained concealed for decades. David studied the devices carefully, noting the symbols, mechanisms, and connections to the floor patterns and murals. He understood that these were tools, both literal and symbolic, meant to guide the persistent seeker through the mansion's final mystery. Hours turned into evening as he explored the newly revealed chamber. The mansion seemed to pulse with energy, the hum vibrating through the walls and floor guiding him with subtle cues. Shadows shifted, light flickered, and the atmosphere became increasingly charged. David felt the mansion's presence keenly, as if it were both teacher and guardian, challenging him to continue with patience, precision, and respect. He carefully documented each artifact, sketched diagrams, and cross-referenced symbols with his notes from previous chambers. Every discovery revealed more of the mansion's design, each layer a complex interplay of architecture, narrative, and interactive mechanism. It contained a pedestal with a sealed journal, bound in dark leather, and inscribed with symbols that matched the mansion's deepest marking. David opened it carefully, finding a detailed account of the family's history, the construction of the mansion, and the principles behind its interactive design. The journal described the purpose of the mansion: to preserve memory, knowledge, and legacy through generations, to challenge seekers to uncover truths through observation, intelligence, and perseverance. David realized that he had reached the mansion's core, a place where the family's most valuable lessons and secrets were preserved, awaiting someone capable of understanding them fully. He spent hours reading and documenting the journal, absorbing the intricate details of the mansion's design and the family's intentions. Each page revealed new layers of understanding, from the hidden corridors and mechanisms to the symbolic meaning behind the artifacts and murals. David felt a profound sense of connection to the mansion, recognizing that his journey was both a personal quest and a continuation of the family's carefully preserved legacy. The mansion had guided him to this point, testing his perception, patience, and intellect, and rewarding him with knowledge that few had ever accessed. By late night, David reflected on his discovery. The mansion's secrets were vast and complex, a living narrative preserved in architecture, symbols, and artifacts. He had navigated hidden passages, solved intricate puzzles, and uncovered layers of history and legacy. The mansion was more than a building. It was a challenge, a teacher, and a guardian of knowledge. David understood that the journey was far from complete. There were still layers yet to explore, mysteries waiting to be unveiled, and lessons to be learned. He felt exhilarated, determined, and humbled, ready to continue his exploration and uncover the mansion's final revelation.
David had spent days navigating the mansion's labyrinthine corridors, decoding its symbols, uncovering hidden chambers, and documenting its artifacts. Each discovery had brought him closer to understanding the mansion's ultimate purpose, but he knew that the final revelation still awaited. The hum that had guided him throughout the building was stronger than ever, vibrating through the floors and walls, as if signaling that he had reached the threshold of the mansion's deepest secret. He felt a mixture of anticipation and trepidation, aware that this was the culmination of every step, every observation, and every careful deduction he had made. He returned to the central chamber, the one containing the elaborate pedestal and the mechanical devices. The concentric symbols etched into the floor glowed faintly in the dim light of his lantern, responding subtly to his movements. The murals on the vaulted ceiling seemed to shift as well, the painted figures almost alive, guiding him toward a precise alignment. David carefully positioned the mechanical device on the pedestal, following the sequence he had deduced from the journals and previous discoveries. The room hummed, the vibrations intensifying as the final mechanism prepared to reveal the mansion's ultimate secret. He took a deep breath, steadying his mind and body, knowing that every detail of this moment mattered. With careful precision, he activated the device. The pedestal rotated slowly, revealing a hidden compartment beneath it. A soft light emerged from within, illuminating a small staircase descending into a hidden chamber below. The hum reached a crescendo, and the shadows along the walls shifted dramatically, creating an almost tangible sense of anticipation. David descended the staircase cautiously, the air growing colder and heavier with each step. The floor beneath him vibrated subtly, resonating with the hum that had become a constant companion throughout his exploration. He felt as if the mansion itself were aware of his presence, acknowledging his persistence and granting him access to the deepest layer of its mysteries. The ceiling stretched high above, adorned with intricate murals that depicted the mansion's construction, the family's legacy, and the countless secrets preserved within its walls. The floor was covered with concentric circles, each etched with symbols connecting to the artifacts, devices, and journals he had discovered. In the center of the room was a raised platform, upon which rested a large, intricately designed box, far more elaborate than any previous artifact. David approached slowly, his heart pounding with anticipation. This was the culmination of the mansion's centuries of careful planning, the repository of its most valuable and closely guarded secret. He unwrapped the box carefully, revealing its contents, a collection of journals, letters, and artifacts, each more significant than the last. The journals detailed the mansion's purpose, to preserve knowledge, memory, and legacy across generations, and the methods by which it had been concealed and protected. The letters included instructions, reflections, and accounts from the family members who had built and maintained the mansion, describing their intentions, fears, and achievements. The artifacts were symbolic and functional, representing keys to understanding the mansion's mechanisms and interactive design.
David realized that he had reached the core of the mansion's legacy, a place meant for the most dedicated and perceptive seekers. Hours passed as he studied the documents and artifacts, piecing together the mansion's story and the family's intentions. The design of the building, the placement of objects, and the alignment of symbols all revealed a deliberate and meticulous system. Every corridor, room, and hidden passage was part of a larger narrative, carefully crafted to challenge, educate, and preserve. David felt a profound sense of connection to the mansion and its creators, understanding that he was part of an ongoing story, a continuum of discovery and preservation that spanned generations. These devices, similar to the mechanical key, were designed to unlock hidden compartments, reveal secret passages, and illuminate concealed murals. David realized that the mansion's design was interactive on multiple levels, requiring both intellectual and intuitive engagement. The devices were tools, symbolic and practical, meant to guide the seeker through the mansion's final mysteries. Carefully he began testing each one, observing how the floor patterns shifted, how shadows moved, and how the murals responded to his action. Each adjustment revealed new information, leading him deeper into the mansion's core secrets. As he progressed, he noticed a subtle vibration beneath his feet, accompanied by a faint glow emanating from the wall. Following the clues, he discovered a hidden door at the far end of the chamber, previously obscured by shadows and intricate murals. Pressing the sequence of symbols he had learned, the door opened slowly, revealing a narrow corridor leading to a smaller chamber. The hum grew stronger, resonating through the stone walls and floor, signaling that he had reached a critical point in the mansion's design. David stepped into the chamber carefully, aware that every action, every observation, and every choice could influence the mansion's response. Inside, the chamber was filled with artifacts and documents that chronicled the mansion's most secret history. The walls were lined with symbols, some familiar and some entirely new, forming a complex network of patterns connecting every artifact, passage, and mural he had encountered. In the center of the room was a pedestal holding a single, unassuming journal. Its cover was worn, but the symbols etched into it matched those throughout the mansion, suggesting that it contained the final piece of the puzzle. David opened the journal carefully, revealing pages filled with meticulous notes, diagrams, and reflections from the family members who had designed the mansion. The writings described the ultimate purpose of the mansion: to preserve legacy, challenge intellect, and reveal truths only to those capable of careful observation and patience. The family had designed the mansion not merely as a building, but as a living repository of knowledge and memory. Each hidden passage, artifact, and interactive device was a deliberate component of a complex system, intended to engage seekers and reward perseverance. David realized that his journey was the culmination of generations of careful planning, a continuation of the legacy the family had preserved. The mansion had guided him, tested him, and ultimately revealed its deepest secrets, trusting him to understand and document them responsibly. As he finished reading, he noticed a subtle shift in the chamber. A section of the wall rotated slowly, revealing a hidden passage leading even deeper. The hum of the mansion intensified, and the air grew cooler and dense. David understood that this final passage contained the mansion's most guarded secrets, a place reserved for those who had demonstrated extraordinary patience, intelligence, and perseverance. He stepped cautiously into the corridor, the walls lined with symbols that resonated with the artifacts and journals he had uncovered. Each step brought him closer to the ultimate revelation, the culmination of the mansion's centuries-long design. The corridor opened into a grand chamber, its ceiling arched high above, covered with murals depicting the mansion's creation, the family's achievements, and symbolic representations of knowledge, memory, and legacy. In the center was a massive pedestal, holding an artifact of unparalleled complexity and significance. David approached slowly, his heart racing. This was the mansion's final secret, the culmination of every clue, every symbol, and every interactive mechanism he had encountered. He carefully examined the artifact, noting its intricate design, symbols, and inscriptions. It was clear that this object represented the mansion's ultimate purpose, a key to understanding the entirety of the building's legacy. Following the instructions in the journals and aligning the artifact with the symbols on the floor, David activated the final mechanism. The room responded immediately. The murals glowed faintly, shadows shifted dramatically, and a low, resonant hum filled the chamber. The mansion seemed to come alive around him, acknowledging his success and revealing its final revelations. Panels on the walls slid open, revealing additional journals, letters, and artifacts, all meticulously preserved. The writings detailed the family's history, the mansion's construction, and the reasoning behind every hidden passage, symbol, and interactive mechanism. David realized that he had uncovered the mansion's ultimate narrative, a complex tapestry of legacy, knowledge, and challenge preserved across generations. The mansion's secrets were vast, intricate, and interconnected, revealing both the family's history and their profound understanding of human perception, cognition, and persistence. David felt a deep sense of fulfillment and awe, knowing that he had become part of a legacy, carefully preserved for centuries. The mansion had tested him, guided him, and ultimately rewarded his diligence with the full revelation of its purpose. As night fell, he reflected on the journey he had undertaken. The mansion was more than a building. It was a living repository of history, knowledge, and legacy. Its interactive design, hidden passages, symbols, and artifacts were all part of a deliberate system intended to challenge, educate, and preserve. David understood that his role was not only to uncover the secrets, but to document them, ensuring that the legacy would continue to be understood and appreciated by those who came after him. The mansion had revealed its deepest mysteries, and he had proven himself worthy of understanding. With careful attention, he retraced his steps, ensuring that all findings were recorded and artifacts preserved. The mansion remained alive with subtle vibrations and shifting shadows, as if acknowledging his presence and success. David left the final chamber, carrying the knowledge, documents, and understanding he had gained. He knew that the mansion's story would now be shared responsibly, preserving the legacy of the family and the intricate design of the building itself. The mansion had tested, guided, and revealed, leaving David with a profound sense of accomplishment, awe, and connection to a centuries-old legacy. David finally uncovered the mansion's deepest secrets, revealing a legacy hidden for centuries. But as the doors closed behind him, the mansion seemed to whisper that its story is far from over. What other mysteries lie within its walls? Could there be more hidden chambers yet to be discovered? If you loved this thrilling journey through the Vanishing Mansion, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more spine-chilling crime and mystery stories. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a story that keeps you on the edge of your seat. And remember, some secrets are meant to be uncovered, but some may change everything you thought you knew.